This is the Wise Guy Radio Show, a podcast dedicated to educating and inspiring through conversations with today's top talents in the world of glass. We will be dissecting their journeys in hopes to deliver actionable content that you, the artist, can start implementing now, helping you grow not only as a creative spirit, but also a successful artistic entrepreneur. With a little organization, relationship building, and your artistic ability, you can obtain greatness. Climb aboard. Whether an artist, retail owner, or enthusiast, we have a ton of fun in store for you. Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
You're listening to the Wise Guy Radio Show.
This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by American Helix. The American Helix is a revolutionary new concept in smoking technology. Designed and manufactured by American glassblowers, this pipe is light years ahead of its time. Based on Bernoulli's principle, the shape of the pipe along with an innovative intake system creates a Venturi effect through precision microholes in the chamber, which results in a slower burn that conserves tobacco and gives a smooth, refreshing smoking experience, making the American Helix the smoothest hitting pipe on the market. For further info or to locate their products, you can find them online at AmericanHelix.com. That's AmericanHelix.com. Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Wise Guy Radio Show, episode number 164. This is your host, Jason Michael, and thank you so much for tuning in today. Today's episode features two best ofs. The first best of is part one of a 5-part series where I explored the ideas of marketing and selling your work. And the second bookend here is going to be a best of featuring Dustin Revere. And I wanted to do this as a 2-part, for one, because I haven't had a chance to post an episode in a while, but also because not only is this month dedicated to marketing and selling your work, but also with this launch of the new online courses coming on soon, and Dustin's knowledge in selling work, which we talk about a little bit in this conversation we had, and as well as him being a very more or less central knowledge-based person in our industry that has influenced a lot of glassblowers, including possibly yourself listening to this right now. So I wanted to make sure that I definitely replayed his interview because he definitely gives a lot of insights into his personal life, into the growth of the industry, to what got him started with classes and courses and teaching, and also in terms of the concepts of selling your work, and whether it's trade shows or to stores, building relationships, all that good stuff. So definitely hope you enjoy these two back-to-backs. Give you some space and time to be on the torch, have a good chunk of some stuff to listen to. Also wanted to remind you to go check out mountainglass.com. They have their monthly sales going on in June, which are almost over. And wanted to also recognize and celebrate the fact that we now have the Flow magazine and American Helix back on board as sponsors for the next year, which I'm super pumped about and grateful for these guys to be on board. Right now you can go, if you have not yet, go to theflowmagazine.com and subscribe to their magazine, and if you put in code WISEGUY at checkout, you will receive 10% off your subscription, which is pretty cool. So WISEGUY, W-Y-Z-G-U-Y, is the code you put in. If there is an issue having trouble getting that 10%, let me know, but I'm pretty sure that everything's ready to go with those guys. So again, just go to theflowmagazine.com and then put in the code WISEGUY at checkout to receive 10% off their subscriptions to their magazines. They just had their Marbles magazine, Marbles issue come out, which is fantastic. It is chock full of lessons, including Sabina Boehm, who was just on the show recently, talking about how she does her marbles and her assemblies. Doesn't get into details on the specific patterns and shapes she's doing, but really into the actual full assembly of a 2-sided marble, on top of a bunch of other good techniques and stuff in there. There's all kind of stuff. So go to theflowmagazine.com, check them out. Also, if you're a smoke shop and have not yet carried anything from American Helix and Box Fan Willie and the crew over there, definitely go to AmericanHelix.com, check them out. They have a really innovative, awesome concept in pipe technology using pinholes that create a Venturi effect in the chamber of the piece. And a Venturi effect basically is a more or less creates like a DNA strand, if you kind of think of the concept of taking lines and twisting them around themselves. That makes like that DNA strand, and that's what their smoke does in the pipes, which cools everything down. It's really amazing stuff. So check out AmericanHelix.com for more information. Oh man, so I'm driving to work, as you can probably hear. I apologize for the delay in episodes. Again, it's just life right now is crazy busy between launching these classes, getting edited videos, working full time, just life in general. No excuses, just giving you all kind of excuses, I guess. I don't know what you want to call them. But that being said, I'm going to bounce out of here. I'm in heavy traffic. Just want to touch base, tell you how much I'm grateful and thankful for you for tuning in. We are almost at 100,000 downloads, which is just unbelievable. So thank you for the support and the love. And that being said, if you have not yet gone to patreon.com/wiseguyradio, I'll have a link in the show notes. You can go on there and become a wise ass, which is what I'm calling all you who are going on and joining our Patreon club, where you can help donate as little as $1 a month to help support this podcast, because this podcast is getting a little expensive. The more episodes we put out, the more volume, the more monthly shows, content, etc. continues to go up in price. And I'm definitely able to pay for it with the sponsorships, but every little penny does help pay the bills here. So any little bit helps. Appreciate you. Links in the show notes. Got lots of surprises and things coming up for that soon. But other than that, I'm going to rock and roll so I don't die in traffic, because that would not be good. So in the meantime, enjoy this episode featuring the best of part 1 of part 5 in marketing and selling your work. Also, best of featuring Dustin Revere. Love you so much. Take care. Happy melting. Stay hydrated. It is fucking hot. We'll talk to you soon. Peace. And now it's time for us to get into part 1 of a part 5 series all about covering the pricing and selling of our work. And today we are diving headfirst into selling to a distributor. I personally sell my work through 2 distributors and several retailers directly. The benefits of both allow for a consistent income without putting all of your eggs in one basket. On one hand, you have a catalog through a distributor that has a broader reach of distribution, allowing for more exposure of your lines of work. Most distributors take a 15% fee off the top of the wholesale, so if you sell an item for $10 wholesale, the distributor will then pay you $7.75 per item. If you calculate your time and gas that it takes to drive around and hope to sell your work, it is more beneficial to work with a distributor. But when you first start out, I recommend starting off by selling to a select few local shops and have them help you fine-tune your right pricing based on their customers' feedback with the sales of it. In the long run, you can then fine-tune your own lines and become more consistent with your work as well as the pricing, which you can then approach the catalog companies with. And don't forget, when building relationships with the distributors, it is important to remember that you need to mail off free samples to give them a physical sample of your work. This allows them to settle on pricing, and then if they accept the item, they have it for photographing it for their catalog. If you decide to go this route, there are a few details to take into consideration. First, distribution companies tend to buy in bulk, which means you will need to be able to keep up with orders if your lines sell well. If you get large orders and you are unable to keep up with your orders for these companies, they will probably not buy from you in the future. So keep that in mind. If you have 3 items that they pick up and they order 50 of each, that's 150 items that you will have to make for that order. Now, it's great money and also great consistent orders, but you have to be able to keep up with it. So just remember, keep that in mind. Remember about that kind of stuff. Number 2 is to purchase your materials in bulk, which will save you a ton in overhead and shipping. If you order 6 or more cases, then freight will be an option to ship, which will then save you tons of cash in the long run. Also, wait till companies like Mountain Glass have a monthly sale on clear or color, and you can get a great discount. Remember, cases probably cost around $30 to ship. So if you get 10 cases, that's $300 in shipping. Or you can have it sent by freight, and that'll only cost you around $120. Now, not all freight companies will ship directly to your house, so keep that in mind as well. You may need to go to the distribution company, that is the freight company's hub in a sense, to pick up your materials. So you need to get a pickup truck or maybe rent a U-Haul. So some things to consider in pricing. But generally, most freight companies will be able to ship to your house. Even if they have to park around the corner, they can just bring it down to your house on a cart, which I've had done before myself. So whether you buy your material in bulk or single cases, always estimate your cost to manufacture based on the regular pricing, not the sale price, as well as always include shipping in the cost of a case. If you buy a case of 1-inch heavy wall and it costs you $130 before shipping, then the actual cost will be around $165. And that's because you have around $30 to $35 in shipping. Remember, most companies that sell glass that is 5 feet in lengths, the UPS has an additional $15 charge for those type of cases. So think about that when you're ordering your glass as well. Some folks like to get their glass if they order small amounts of glass. Mountain glass, for instance, will cut those tubes in half, which will then make them easier to pack in a smaller case, which will then save you on shipping. So just some ways to go about it. But you should still make sure you price your materials based on if you were just ordering a regular case of glass and paying for regular shipping as well. So now you have a case of glass that's costing you $165. You now need to divide that cost by the number of tubes in the case. So for instance, a case of 1-inch heavy wall has around 24 tubes typically. So take 24, divide that by 165, and now you have an average estimated cost of what it's going to cost you per tube. And then if you have a 5-foot tube, then you take that 5 foot, break it down into inches, which is 60 inches. And now you can figure out how much it costs you per inch in your clear. Real easy ways of doing your calculations. And below, I have on the show notes, which I'm about to read from, is your basic calculations for figuring out the cost of manufacturing your items. And this is very important when it comes to dealing with the distributor, because you need to make sure your pricing is set at a point to where you're not overpricing it so that they have trouble selling it, but also so that you're not underpricing it so that you're leaving money on the table. These are the kind of things you can find to make sure that when you're doing distribution work, you should be making a minimum of $30 an hour profit. An average studio day for myself costs me around $10 to $20 an hour to work, just based depending on what I'm doing. But if I'm in just basic production mode, doing just typical production stuff, which has been a while, but when I did do it, it was costing me around $10 an hour to work. So just some things to think about. So now I'm going to get into a basic calculation example when figuring out the cost of manufacturing your items. And here's how to calculate your cost of production. In this example, I'm using reference from the internet, which has material priced based on length. And again, this is a generic example where we are using a 3-inch wrap and rake hand pipe. The materials to manufacture this hand pipe is a 2-inch section of 25.4 heavy wall simax, a 1/2-inch section of cobalt bursts, and also a 9-inch section of 4mm clear for raking. And I figured out these calculations based on some samples I made before doing these numbers, just to kind of get an idea of what it actually takes to manufacture these pieces. Also based on items I used to make years and years and years ago that I haven't made in a long time. But it's all still the same across the board. No matter what it is you're making, you just need to fill in the blanks. So the material breakdown, the 2-inch section of Simax 25.4 heavy wall, a 60-inch section of tubing, which is 5 feet, cost $8. And that's averaging around 13 cents an inch. So for a 2-inch section to create this piece, it's costing me 26 cents. Then I use a 1/2-inch section of cobalt firsts, which cost $5.25 for an 18-inch rod. So for a 1/2 inch of that, it costs 15 cents. And then a 9-inch section of 4mm clear for raking. It's averaging around 52 cents for a full-length rod of 60 inches. And that's averaging a 9-inch section. It's about a dollar or a penny per inch. So you have a 9-inch section is going to cost you 9 cents. Now to estimate the total cost of goods for the 3-inch wrap and rake spoon, you have 26 cents plus 15 cents plus 9 cents equals an estimated 50 cents. So now you get into figuring out the overall cost in general. Now, you have to remember, if you're renting a space from a studio, this is going to be an easier process for you. If you own your own space, or in terms of renting your own studio space, or you're working out of your house, you still need to figure out the baseline cost of what it is to manufacture in that space. Not using raw materials, but what your propane, your gases, and your electricity is costing you, also with your rent involved in that as well. So I have here, for my example, I have it where you have a monthly costs of around $1,500, again, covering your power, your rent, and your gases. And then you break that down per day and then estimate how many hours you work in a day and use that number as a base calculation. So for this example, at $1,500 a month, and it's a 30-day month, I approximate it's $50 a day to work. And if I work a 10-hour day, it's costing me $5 an hour to work based on the gases, the power, and the rent. Now you put that number aside, and then you start the process of then adding it into what it costs you to manufacture your spoon. So again, our example of the 3-inch wrap and rake spoon, we said it costs us roughly 50 cents to make. But if we make 10 of those an hour, that's going to cost us $5 an hour to make, right? So you need to figure out that your 3-inch spoon, if you're making 10 an hour at $5 a piece, your estimated cost total to manufacture that item, including your gas, your power, and your rent, is $10 an hour. So therefore, you go and you add your $5 for your rent, your power, and your gas, plus the $10 or 10 spoons you're making per hour at 50 cents a piece, which is $5 equals $10 an hour to manufacture 10 $5 spoons. So now you figure out your net, and then you can figure out your gross. Now remember, your net is your revenue. Your gross is revenue minus cost to manufacture and everything else that's cost there, including shipping, which then will equal your profit. So if you net $50, and that's if you made 10 $5 3-inch wrap and rake spoons, and you take the $10 it costs to manufacture that we figured out before and subtract it from the $50, then it's going to leave you an estimated gross of $40 an hour. And an 8-hour day, you could make $320, which is pretty effing good. That's $320 profit. So you can see just by getting a good baseline down for estimating your cost to manufacture, you have the ability to make anywhere from $30 to $60 an hour in gross profits. Remember, your net is your revenue, and your gross is income minus cost to manufacture, which then becomes your profit. And this is not boring stuff. I mean, it can be kind of boring, but I'm just tired, and I need to walk and get some carbon dioxide out of my lungs. I'm yawning here, sorry. So now you need to take 15% of your profits and put that aside for taxes. And that's a serious thing. Remember, 15% is a high number for some people, but if you pay 15% every quarter and your estimated cost of taxes, then at the end of the year, if you overpaid, you get a refund. And then if you just kind of underpaid a little bit, then you can just have a small bill for the tax man at the end of the year. So let's do a quick recap on how we came to figure out these numbers. Again, a 3-inch wrap and rake spoon is costing us approximately 50 cents to manufacture. If you can make 10 of those an hour, that means that hour it costs you $5 to manufacture those 10 wrap and rake spoons, and that's only in raw materials. And then you take your other estimated cost per hour, which is $5 for your power, your rent, and your gas, add that to your manufacturing costs of materials, and that makes it so that it then costs $10 per hour to create 10 $5 wrap and rake spoons. Those 10 $5 wrap and rake spoons are then sold. You made $50. Now you take that $50, you subtract it from the $10 that it costs you to manufacture, which then leaves you with a $40 gross profit. So after you have this calculation of $40 an hour, you still got to remember you need to take into consideration shipping costs. You may have some other miscellaneous costs. If you have like a water jug in the studio from like another company for water, you have little miscellaneous costs that are in there. So you got to take into consideration all of those things. But at the end of the week, if you made, say, 100 $5 wrap and rake spoons, you know it costs you 50 cents a piece to make those 100 spoons. Just do the math. It's really simple. Just add it up and add it up and add it up. Fill in the blanks. Do the math. There's no reason you should not be able to make $30 to $60 an hour gross profit. That's profit, which means that you've already taken out the money that it costs to manufacture and also run your studio space. So if you do the math and you do this properly, then you will be successful and setting yourself up for success. In the past, I didn't do this shit. I just would make the money and then I'd pay my bills. And then I would be like, okay, I got to go buy some glass to make more shit. let me make a couple spoons and go sell them so I can buy some more materials. And it became a vicious cycle, and it became very stressful and just wore me out. And I know a lot of people out there in our industry have been doing that for years and still to this day do it. And it is not an easy thing to break. So if you start this habit early on in your career or in the very beginnings, or just start it now, it's going to help you for years and years and years to come, and will help you to grow your business and your profits and help you to become financially successful. And then you can take this extra money that you're making and you can figure out how to pay yourself a salary, which I discussed in a past episode. You can also take some of this money and invest it into a mutual fund, which we've discussed in past episodes. All this stuff comes together and culminates. And this, again, is why I feel a distributor is more beneficial, because a distributor is going to order anywhere from 50 to 100 of these pieces at a time. And this, again, is just one sample example of a cheap-ass piece. $5 spoons. So if you're selling a $5 wholesale to a store, that means a distributor is probably going to pay you $3 for it. So do your math. It's real easy to do. You can also take this baseline calculation at the very end, subtract 15% off that, and then you have a better idea of what you're going to be putting in your pocket because your distributor is taking 15% off the top. So I hope this helps you guys. It makes a big difference when you can sit down and actually calculate this cost and the numbers and everything else, especially when it comes to figuring out your pricing. Truly figure it out. If you say you set yourself up and you only wanted to sell these for $4 or for $3 and it's costing you $6 to manufacture, well, then you're in the negative and you're in the red, which is not good for business. You want to try and stay in the black as much as you possibly can. Now, when you're starting off early on in business, you're going to be dumping all your money back into your business as much as you can to continue to help it grow, buy more supplies, buy more materials. But in the very beginning, if you can set yourself up to where you then buy bulk every, say, 3 months or every 6 months, and you just buy a shit ton, you spend a couple $1,000s at a time, and you set yourself up for success too, because you're not only saving money in cost because you're buying in bulk, saving in shipping, but you're also not having to worry about buying materials down the road. And if you need to buy some things here and there to fill in the gaps, you can.
Man's inhumanity to man, all those things cause complication and creation. See, the domination of one nation to another nation, all those things cause complication. See.
Blue skies gone away, fast clouds them up there, crisscrossing so straight, like Google to under dissipate. Clear skies gone away, fast clouds like every day, commercial or military, either way, it's obvious to me that them spray. Look up man, just look up and you see it. I'm not gonna troll no man, no way them do it. It's a part of a plan, an attempt to deplete, compromise I and I immunity. Look up man, it's so easy to see. You pay attention, it's easy to see. Modification, them I take it lightly, but them human just like you and me. Or maybe? Aluminum, particulate them fill me lungs. Sick every month and they better not come. Control the population or try control the season. Do anything them can to advance to type 1. Convince the people chemicals of condensation. Or the conference, the sugar coat the truth like confections. From down here we can see that it's a cover up conception. So me stand an open objection.
have to rise up and see in this time.
Hey, what's up, Dustin? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, brother, man, it's good to have you on. We've been playing phone tag, and I've been wanting to get you on here, man, because for me, as an inspiration to our industry, yourself and then Slinger doing Degenerate Art has really spawned a whole new generation of glass blowers out there. I mean, by the thousands. I mean, literally.
Yeah, and tens of thousands.
Yeah, it's it's insane, and just a whole generation of like Dustin Revere students in a sense that learn through YouTube and what have you. And so I definitely am honored to have you on the show and excited to chit chat with you. And before we get a little sidetracked here, if you want to start off by telling us how you were introduced to the torch, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I started blowing glass in 1995, and I just graduated high school. I've been doing a lot of art before that, and specifically pottery, and I knew I wanted to try it. There was no information available besides Homer Hoyt's book, which I don't even know if it's people know about it these days, but it was like a scientific kind of making art with scientific style glass that Glasscraft had put out, and so I bought that book, and I started looking around for different pieces of equipment. So I would go to a welding shop and buy a regulator, and then I'd find that little hand torch and found a kiln, and because I'd been doing pottery before, so I'd built a kiln already, and I just kind of was familiar about that. But I gathered all my supplies from different sources, and it took me a little while, but yeah, I started pretty rough on like my parents' deck on their house, and just tried to figure it out without any instruction. There was no books, there was no YouTube, there was no people to call. I mean, at that time in the United States, my guess is there was probably about 10 or maybe 20 pipe makers in the country, and so it was very secret and not an easy thing to try to figure out technically too.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's kind of funny because everybody's like asking me how long I've been doing this for, and I started myself in '99, and I always say it was before YouTube, and then I also bring up it was before Dustin Revere. so
yeah.
So
I felt that there needed to be like an index of techniques, because just like you and I and a lot of other old schoolers kind of know, is that like doing it by yourself and trying to learn from your mistakes, it's a great experience, but it's time consuming and can be frustrating for people who don't have time and money to invest and fail so much to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey dude, can you give me 1 second? I'm getting a weird, I don't know, I've reset my studio up for recording. I'm getting the weirdest freaking buzz noise. I don't know what the fuck it is. It's driving me nuts. Can you hear it on your end?
No.
Okay. I don't know if I've just got equipment too close together and they're just giving each other weird feedback. Trying to like keep all my shit together so I don't have to keep setting things up. I usually record in my house.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, I'm good now. It went away.
Cool.
So, but yeah, man, yeah, it's interesting because like even some of the guys that have been around for years and years and like as long as us, that actually had an opportunity to learn from somebody or work alongside somebody else. Did you start off like you're saying you started off in your studio more or less on your own? Kind of just figuring this stuff out. Was there a point in time that you then went on to work with other artists?
Yeah, absolutely. So I at the time I was about to start going to college in Oakland at the California College of Arts and Crafts to focus on glass blowing. And so that's a furnace, classical furnace stuff. And so at the time I was, when I started lamp working, I started furnace at the same time. And I really thought that I wanted to be like a classic furnace worker, Venetian style. And I did a lot of classes and worked with some of those guys. But I very soon, like within a few years of me starting, 2 or 3 years, I started to get a lot of opportunities to study with lamp workers. And so it redirected, what I was doing, because I was just getting so many opportunities to study with lamp workers. So about 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years into it, I went to a school in North Carolina for the summer called Penland School for Crafts. And it's a specific craft school that has a lot of mediums besides glass. And I went there and I got a scholarship for one session, and it was 2 weeks. And then they have an auction during the session. And so I was actually able to sell enough work in the auction each session to continue all summer. And there I was able to meet Gianni Toso. And he is a master furnace worker and master lamp worker. And he's from Murano. And he has over 700 years of uninterrupted lineage in glassblowing.
Wow.
So I said, hey, I want to, apprentice with you for furnace, because I was really focused on the furnace and just making pipes and stuff for to kind of help support everything. And also because I was using cannabis for epilepsy, so I really connected with it. But he's like, no, I don't have apprentices. I don't take on apprentices, especially Americans. And I basically just tagged around him the whole 2 weeks. And at the end, he's like, fine, you can come apprentice with me. And I need help building my furnace because I only have a lamp working studio at home. So I was like, oh, great. I'll move to your area, and I'll do whatever you want. And, as a kid, I always was fascinated by the Karate Kid kind of style of learning, paint my fence and that'll teach you to be a black belt.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was really cool. But then when I was put in that situation, it's a little difficult because I wanted to be a master glass blower, and he's basically help me build a vineyard, help me, move this cement. And I was like, all right. So I did that, and I worked with him for about a year, but we never got the furnace built, and I just basically helped him with lamp working.
Huh.
And so all soft glass. And so I would work during the day in his soft glass studio, and I was able to set up my own Boro studio at one of his neighbors' houses in their garage. And then I just would work at night and on the weekends making pipes, and then during the days I would help him with his soft glass stuff. And so after Gianni Toso, that was about a year, I went back to Penland, and I was able to meet Cesare Tofolo, and
Nice.
I basically begged him for the same thing. He's like, and you can work with me. And I was like, awesome, because at that point I was a little more focused on lamp working, and especially the Venetian style and the epitome of technique, which Cesare in my mind and many others is the best classical shaper in all of lamp working. So I was like, all right. So I was able to go to Italy and Murano and work with him. And when I was in Italy, I got to meet Davide Salvador and Lucio Bubacco, and work with those kind of guys and have some custom tools made from Dino Tedeschi. And this was in about 1998, 1999, when the first time I went to Murano, and came back, and then went to a school in Tennessee called the Appalachian Center for Crafts, which was another sort of crafts focused school. And I would blow furnace glass and then have my own little studio set up for pipe making. And from there, I would get opportunities to work with people like Roger Paramore and Paul Stankard and a lot of American greats. I worked a little bit with Emilio Santini, Robert Mickelson back in the day. So I got to get a really big variety of classical masters. There was no master pipe makers like we have today. So basically I had to adapt the techniques that I was learning to make the pipes.
Yeah, man, that's incredible, bro. Holy fuck. First 4 years into it, and you have like this bucket list already checked off of all these masters. It's amazing. 'Cause, like, I know growing up and seeing like Glass Line and the Flow magazine and some different, even just art magazines, and seeing all these names you just mentioned. And early on in my career, just kind of figuring this shit out. Those were the artists I looked up to and was just blown away. It's like, man, I aspire to be them one day, or that type of art, or that skill level in a sense, you know. So
yeah, I was definitely going after it, and I would do anything I could to work with these guys. I would clean up whatever they wanted. I would be able to pay a little bit. I would, from the pipes that I was making, and pay them, if they needed some money or whatever. I would do anything. I was after it. I was not focused on anything else, and so I was really after it. And there's some more guys too. I was just going from one place to the next, trying to learn all the different techniques and styles of glass blowing and lamp working.
Yeah, then you're kind of able to take all that and then culminate it into what your style is now.
Yeah, exactly. The way to get the most information is to try to be around the most people that are better than you, and take any pieces you can from each person and see how to put that together for yourself. And now I have my own style of blowing glass, which is definitely found, the foundation is with all these guys, but I don't work like any one of them individually. Like, I don't work like Cesare or Gianni or Paramore or Emilio. I work in a combination, and that's what the American pipe making style is. It's really a combination of those different styles, and it's not one particular style.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely a fusion of so much stuff. And that's what I think is so much fun with the pipe making, besides the technical side of the traditional lamp working, is all the science that's involved, going into the scientific glass blowing stuff, and just having to understand what we're working with. Because all those masters, those guys that you worked with, a lot of those guys all did solid work. Some of them did hollow work as well, but a lot of it was solid sculpture. So did you find like the transition from working lamp work, sculptural, solid stuff with soft glass going into the Boro, like did it teach you more because of the amount of patience you have to have when you're working with like Moretti or some kind of soft glass like that?
Yeah, I mean, they're different. They work differently, as a lot of soft glass will stay hot longer and it reacts differently with the flame. Yeah, I mean, it taught me about how glass moves and what the different chemistries of glass are that move, but ultimately glass is glass, and just because one moves slower than the other or is more resistant to thermal shock, it's still glass. I've worked with soft glass from different coefficients, even up to at one point in the furnace we were just putting in broken like bottles, for like wine bottles and stuff, and that particular chemistry of glass is very short, so it's made to put into a mold and freeze into shape, so you don't have a lot of time to work, whereas some of the soft glass with a very high coefficient of expansion stays long for a long time, and it's so hot it could just drip on the floor. And borosilicate is kind of in between, so it just taught me to pay attention to how the glass is moving and how I need to adapt to the way that that particular chemistry of glass works. But ultimately, when the common denominator is glass, it melts, it's going to move, it's an amorphous solid, and just because one has boron and one has soda ash as a flux, it's still the basic
Yeah, exactly. It's all honey when it comes down to it. Yeah. Because I know, like, my first introduction recently, like working over at Disney, everything we do mostly, I shouldn't say everything, but most everything we do is Boro. We have a couple of bead makers there, and I had a chance to work at one of the studios doing bead work, and it was my first introduction into it. And I always say I just made a mess, really, trying to find the right flame properties to make this stuff not pop and spit everywhere, and then also trying to find the right flame setting to get the right color, because the soft glass, it's really easy to reduce it down. Even though Boro is too, but the soft glass is way more sensitive, if I found, and it's like you're saying, glass is glass. I just had to sit back and go back to my foundation. And that's why I always preach to take a class, no matter what it is. If it's furnace work, soft glass, whatever it is, go ahead and take a class from somebody, because you're going to learn something, especially hand techniques. And I think the hot shop is a good place to start for classes, because you really get a lot of hand technique, especially when it comes to using tools.
Yeah, what I say a lot in the videos is when you're learning from somebody, it's important to watch their hands sometimes more than what's happening with the glass, because the hands are creating what's happening with the glass.
Yep, exactly. I say the same thing, brother. Hell yeah. Yeah, because I know like I've only taken 2 actual classes ever, and the 2 that I took, I was really wanting to go just to see these guys, how they set up, like how their tools were put out, the height of their bench, their torch, the whole 9 yards. And then also watching their hands, because it's one of our secrets for what we do. You got to have some kind of vision and artistic creation mindset, but really a lot of it's technique and a lot of it's hand technique. And I think a lot of people say like a chef could probably transition into flame working because of their hand techniques and having knife skills, and having that kind of, it's obviously a different ball of wax, but the idea is still there.
I would agree that it's similar. I mean, I love to cook, and I've had some cooking jobs too, and I definitely think it's similar. You got heat, you got timing, and it is similar to blowing glass and using your hands for particular execution of something that you're trying to do.
Yeah. All the while you have all this pressure and intensity, and then also focus, which turns into meditation over the period of time, which one of my favorite things about it, dealing with shit, on the torch.
Yeah. So at my school in Berkeley, about the meditation, for a while I was teaching a lot of classes, and I realized that after people were done blowing glass, they were very blissful. And for years I tried to figure out what it was about glass that makes people happy when they're doing it. And what I've come to after having probably more than 10,000 people come through my brick and mortar building after all the Groupon classes and pipe making classes that we were teaching for a long time, is that it's a meditation, because people are able to not focus on any of the pain or what's happening tomorrow or what happened yesterday, because especially initially when you're blowing glass, it takes 100% of your focus, which is a meditation, and that's why people end up feeling very blissful after they've blown glass. And I think that's also one of the reasons that glass blowing attracts people who have had trauma in their life, because it's a way to meditate through that. And I think a lot of people who I've worked with and met have had some significant traumas that they've had to grapple with, and glass blowing is a meditation, and it helps people be in the moment and realize that that's where everything exists.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Absolutely. Yeah, it's an amazing thing, and two, it's like it teaches you the whole concept and idea of center and being on center, whether it's your glass or your life. And if you're off balance just a little bit, nothing goes right.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because when you're working like from the Italian perspective of blowing glass, center is a fluid state. So the glass often is off center the whole time you're working, and just when you're done with the particular thing, you freeze that into center state. Whereas from a scientific perspective, the glass remains center the whole time. It's really about the fluidity of glass and the center.
I kind of want to step back too with your health. You're talking about being epileptic, and and using cannabis as a medicine. My father-in-law from Vietnam was exposed to Agent Orange, and a lot of the stuff they're finding right now is that a lot of these guys that were veterans are dealing with heart and brain issues because of the exposure, and epilepsy is one of the things he's been dealing with for the past 5 years. It's not major, it's a minor thing, but just often enough it catches him off guard. Yeah. And I've been wanting to introduce him to CBDs or cannabis in a sense of some sort. He's like not very conservative, but he kind of is in some ways, So I find it interesting that you're open completely. I mean, I see all your videos. Every video starts off with you guys talking about some kind of medication of some sort.
Yeah.
Have you found issues through the process of being a glass artist dealing with epilepsy at all?
Well, like I was talking earlier with the trauma, I mean, that was one of my big traumas that I had to grapple with, especially being a kid and having this kind of severe medical condition. And, it definitely was difficult for me socially as a kid growing up. And so through glass, I was able to meditate and find my center dealing with that. I found really early on that cannabis was helping with the seizures, and I don't take any other medication now besides CBD, which is the non-psychoactive, part of cannabis. So that's really an amazing miracle medicine. And for people who, like you're saying, are more conservative, I mean, they can be conservative is fine, but I think being closed-minded is a little bit more difficult to deal with. But you have to present facts. You have to say, there's more people that die of prescription drug overdoses than all other so-called illicit drugs combined. Cannabis, THC is a psychoactive portion of cannabis, and it will make you feel euphoric and high, but CBD will make you feel relaxed and is non-psychoactive. I mean, there's a lot of research, with the Epilepsy Foundation and other qualified scientific studies that show a lot of very promising results, much more than any other prescription medicine. And so you have to present the facts. You have to say, listen, if you're actually concerned, then do the research. If you just want to take prescription drugs, from the biggest drug dealers in the world, do that. But that's for somebody who's not open to change or growth, and then they can do that. But when something presents itself that's a miracle drug that you can produce at home for free, as opposed to buying drugs from these big drug dealers, there's a whole, in our society, there's a whole system set up for people to get prescription drugs super easy, because these companies know that natural remedies exist and that they're easy to get and that they're easy to produce, and financially that scares them. And so there's a lot of propaganda towards that. And it's a system set up to avoid people discovering the benefits of cannabis. And that's one of the reasons that has been a Schedule I drug, is because it limits the research that it can be funded from the government and from other agencies, because a Schedule I drug has no medical benefits, which is not the case for cannabis. But the research is lacking because there's very little funding up until recently that would expose the benefits of cannabis, and specifically CBD, which is a miracle drug for not only epilepsy but MS and Tourette's and all kinds of cancer. And so if I was a big drug company dealing drugs all over the world, making profits and flying around in my private jet, I'd be nervous too about something that somebody could produce at home for free and then stop, spending thousands of dollars a year on the drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, bro. Yeah, well said. Thank you for that. Because I agree with current research and stuff. I mean, even being myself in Florida and our conservative state and the fucked up laws we have, they finally allows medical patients that have severe epilepsy and different disorders and cancer and what have you to have access to this stuff. And we have a dispensary just opened up down the street from my house finally, which is pretty badass and exciting to see. So I'm definitely glad you're bringing this up. So that's why I want to talk about it, because I think part of our industry is, as artists, we're also we're all about being advocates for positive change in the world, and the fact that we do what we do is for a living that has this thumb on us all the time with federal regulations and other things that we care about it, but we don't let it stop us, in a sense. And I think persevering as a glass artist makes you successful, but it also makes you a successful human being in life, And then
and that's one of the reasons why I chose to say really early on in my videos that I have epilepsy and I was using cannabis, is because I'm aware that everyone has something to deal with in their life and a challenge to deal with in their life. And I want people to know that I've also had challenges to deal with, but you can overcome that, and you can still be a glass blower, and you can still do what you love. But everybody has challenges, and everybody has something to deal with, and that's my particular thing. But I've had a lot of people write me and say, I have PTSD or I have some sort of trauma, and glass blowing has helped so much. But I didn't want people to think that it's my life is super easy and it was all given to me, and there was no challenges. So it was really important for me to state that in my videos, so that people could relate to it and understand that people have a challenge to deal with.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I'm glad you do that. I heard another podcaster the other day who's actually has a pretty successful podcast, and he was talking about how like people early on in business, how they compare themselves early on in their business to someone who's been in business for 20 years who's highly successful, and they compare themselves where each individual person is at that moment instead of comparing themselves to where that person was when they started. None of us were any good when we started. I mean, look at you now. You've got like several hundred YouTube videos. You have your own company. You have this whole new line of glass coming out that came out last year, last year. That came out last year or 2 years ago now.
The droplets and stuff.
Yeah, was that 2 years?
About 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah.
So it's growth. It takes time. I don't know if it's embarrassing or not, but I would say I'm a big fan of Vince McMahon and the WWE because I appreciate character development and storyline, and how long it takes someone to go from the bottom rings of early on in their 20s to go through all the beatings and the training and learning technique to where they can get to a platform to then they can excel and get paid a good money. And it's like anything else in life, but that's kind of where we're at with this art. And the fact that you did these YouTube channels to show technique, to save people the time and hassle, even though it's not as easy just to watch a video and then go do it. You know what I mean? You still got to practice it and put it into action. And
a lot of people watch them and they're like, man, you make it look so easy and I can't even do this seal or whatever. But that's just part of the process. I mean, it just takes time and practice. Like you say, people ask me all the time, oh, what's it take to be a master glass blower? And it's a really simple answer. It's just practice. A lot of practice, like an obsessive amount of practice.
Yeah, obsessive is correct. Yeah, dude, because I was, people always talk about the whole 10,000 hour rule, and I'm like, with our industry and our craft and a trade and art, whatever you want to call it, it's like 10,000 hours per technique,
Yeah, I equate it more to like if you're playing a musical instrument, and glass blowing is not really like a guitar, it's more like a violin.
Yeah.
Where it's the epitome of technique and the most difficult challenge, and it's a lot of things 10,000 hours you can master it, but glass is going to take a lot more, and everyone's different. But I've seen a few special gifted people that have mastered it very fast, but in general it takes tens of thousands of hours.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's one fun thing with our medium too, is it exposes artists out there that didn't realize that they were an artist until they started melting glass. Like they can't even draw a stick figure, but you give them a torch and some glass to melt, and it's like the creations that they can make in like the first month is just mind-boggling. It's just like these little prodigies walking around, and especially to have the exposure again through your education. And now that a lot of smoke shops out there are offering classes, and there's other places and studios that are doing classes, just the overall, I call all the open source now that we have to the technique. Because as you know, when we first started, either you had to pay a shit ton of money, or they would just look at you cross-eyed and tell you to go fuck yourself if you even wanted to walk into someone's studio to learn something, much less see how they had it set up,
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of places that offer pipe making classes now. And when I started my school in 2006, I was the first business to offer professional level pipe making classes and workshops with pipe makers. And a lot of people gave me a lot of negative feedback, saying, I was putting myself at risk because it was shortly after Pipe Dreams, and that pipe making wasn't something to be taken seriously, but I was the first person to say, well, a master pipe maker and a master glass blower, they both are masters and they should both be teaching. And so I was offering classes with like Gianni Toso 1 month and then Banjo the next. And now a lot of people have kind of taken that model, and now there's pipe making workshops offered all over the world. But when I started that, there was no other place that did that.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's also why I want to bring you on, brother, because you're like a pioneer in our industry, and I've looked up to you in this process because now that I've always enjoyed teaching myself and also as an entrepreneur, and getting this podcast launched, which all stem from seeing the generations that learn from yourself, but also that were inspired from Degenerate Art, that all of a sudden you see these studio setups in their bedroom with a box fan in the window, and it's like I had to reach out to these kids somehow to be like, you guys got to change what you're doing. This is not healthy or safe, which then inspired me to do this podcast. And here I am, your episode 128. So it's crazy, how things happen like that. And I'm finding even now more so that I love glass and I love being an artist and doing what I do, but I also love the educational space, and to see people reach out back to me, or like you're saying, feedback that you get, that are so grateful for putting something out there that they can take and use and benefit from what we're giving them. Not everybody takes it and uses it, but the ones that do seem to be grateful for it.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people interested in learning, and there's a lot of good resources now. I mean, besides my YouTube channel, there's a lot of groups on Facebook and different people doing some other kind of videos on YouTube. And there's definitely a lot of information out there that makes it a lot easier for people to understand a technique and try to create it themselves, or make a variation of that technique that works for them.
Yeah, for sure. And to kind of go along with the whole YouTube thing, so when you got that started, what was the inspiration to start the YouTube channel?
Well, at the time, I mean, the school right now, we don't offer any public classes or any group classes or any workshops anymore. But at the time, we were doing workshops, and we had a pipe making program that was several months long, and people would come and work for several months in small groups. And I wanted people for the first video, the how to make a clear spoon and a dabber, those first two videos, they came out because I wanted people to, one, know that there was a place to do that, because at the time there it was still pretty early on. I mean, I think Glasscraft had maybe started doing some pipe making classes, but pretty much it was just me. And then I wanted people to know, hey, you could come here and learn how to make pipes. And so then we put up those videos, and they got way more views than I thought. And also I wanted to put up a video because there was no very clear video shot well on YouTube on how to make a pipe. And so I was like, well, there's this guy on YouTube that had 400,000 views on his video, and it's just a hilarious video. And he was an inspiration to me because, he's blowing glass without a shirt on, listening to the Chili Peppers, and like halfway through the video, the power cuts off, and he's like, fuck, keeps blowing glass, and like puts up the video. Like, and it's just like, I mean, I love him because he's an inspiration for my YouTube channel to have a good videos, but like, it's hilarious, and it's just a massive fail. But he had 400,000 views on his video. And so I was like, man, I'm going to make an actual video with a good camera, because I'd been filming stuff prior. I'd already done live streaming for classes where Mickelson and Yashin were teaching at my school, and I've already had been doing stuff where I had made a beta of a glass blowing social network that was active for about a year. And so I had some experience with filming and internet and putting that up. And so I was like, I'm just going to put up a good video for a spoon. And it got, didn't get hundreds of thousands of views, but it got thousands pretty fast. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that people were interested. So then I put up another one, and then pretty soon we had a bunch of videos, and one of my videos had 400,000 or 500,000 views, and we now we have 50,000 subscribers on YouTube, and videos get a couple thousand views in a day or two. Yeah, it was kind of like organic, and I didn't really realize that there was such a demand and an interest for some quality instructional videos on YouTube. So I continued with it because of largely the feedback that I was getting from the viewers, that thank you so much, this is helping me so much, and I can't wait for the next video. And and then it's gotten me to teach all over the world and increased people's understanding of my work and my history, and in turn help them with their work and what's going to be their history. And a lot of people, now tens of thousands of people credit me and my videos for foundational skills that they're going to use for their whole career. And it's extremely rewarding for me to see that happen with other people, and for me and my own work. It's very symbiotic, and it works really well.
Yeah, it's fascinating, bro. And especially to see all the kind of if you look at like a tree, for the family tree of from you being the center of it and what's branched off. And I mean, even now with the guys at Torch Talk and over 6,000 members in this group, that's been like almost 3 years maybe now that they've had this thing. And those guys all worked with you through video chat and work, and then they wanted to continue it, so they started the freaking Torch Talk because it was something that they could continue doing. And what they're doing now is huge for the community. It's just so neat to see it, and as much information as that's out there, I mean, honestly, as you know, there's only a small handful of it that's actually good information, that's solid, good techniques, good habits, that kind of stuff. You see some of these guys out there that are doing videos with no glasses on, they're using like a map gas torch and some bullshit. It's like, it's a joke in a sense. I mean, it's almost a parody on what we're trying to do. Teaching, and it teaches people, like, they see it maybe for the first time being exposed to this, and they're like, oh, that's how you go do it, and then they do it, and then they teach somebody else that does it the same. You know what I'm saying? Like, it teaches generations of bad habits. So
yeah, I wanted to put out the videos too because there was nobody with the kind of experience that I had who was putting out a video. There's no like very qualified glassblower to share these techniques. And like you said, there was a lot of garage techniques and people who have learned entirely by themselves, and that's great, and they have something to teach. I mean, I still take classes with people that I really want to learn a trick or two from, and so I think that's great. But the motivation was I wanted to share the experience that I had. And I mean, like I say in my videos, there's tons of ways to do a particular thing, and this is just the way that I'm choosing to do it right now. But there's a lot of different paths to the same end.
Heck yeah. So have you always had the entrepreneurial spirit in a sense for yourself, as wanting to own a business?
Yeah, absolutely. Even as a kid, I would trade my toys with my friend. I remember one time I traded like one action figure for like 10 dinosaurs from like a friend of mine, and like his parents called my parents and was like, you got to bring back those dinosaurs.
That's awesome.
But yeah, as I got older and practiced more and more business, it became a much bigger part of my life. And I've definitely tried other things and tried different products, and I actually own another business. So I definitely consider myself an entrepreneur, and I'm pushing forward. And if I see gaps in the market, I try to do it. And like for example, the pipe making school, nobody did it. The e-nail, I was developing an electronic device for oils way before there was an e-nail. We had it in the shop. It was called the Edison. It was a coil in quartz that was heated. And I mean, at the time, Dosa was an apprentice, and Punty, and those guys were an apprentice at my studio. And we were we had this electronic device, and they were making swings. So it's always something that I'm developing and trying to do. And a lot of them didn't go through. Like, I never put that Edison into production because it was in 2007 or 8, and it was a little bit early for the oil culture. I worked and made quartz nails, domeless quartz nails, but it was a little bit early. So it's kind of about timing. But I always try to to see where the gaps are and to see how I can fill them if I can.
Yeah, man, I've noticed. It's killer. So could kind of move on from there in terms of that. Like with the new product line you came out with a couple years back with your drop series. What was the inspiration for that? Was it more of like a function over form thing that then turned into form and function?
Well, at the time I had a few employees making my production, and we were developing different designs, and we had about 10 at the time, maybe 5 or 10 designs. And, like I mentioned earlier, like right now it's a super small crew. It's like just me and Carlos, Los One Glass and Opera Glass at the studio. And I like it much better because it takes a lot less management and my time. And so I can focus on my own work and traveling and teaching. So at the time we had a bunch of people, 10 people or so working at the studio, and we were making the production, but the droplet is the one that I kept in production. The other ones, I stopped production because I really was attracted to the form of the droplet. I mean, it's a classical form. I mean, it's basically an amphora or a veronese. It's a Grecian shape. And I wanted to really make a classical shape that kind of was different than other people, but highly functional. And the droplet never gets water in your mouth. It's super small. I mean, it fits in your pocket. And it also, for me, represented the oil culture because it's a drop. It's a drop of oil,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
And so for me, I really wanted a piece that was something that I could reproduce, that was simple enough to reproduce a few of them, but complicated enough that it was difficult to reproduce. I mean, the droplet appears to be a very simple piece to make, but it's actually quite complicated. It's got a side seal with no blow tube that you have to figure out how to connect, and it's got a ring seal and an internal seal, but it's a very simple form. So somebody's going to pick it up, and even a glassblower would be like, "Oh, that's simple to make," but actually, it's a quite a challenging little shape to make. And so with the droplet, I kind of use it as a canvas. So I said, well, I'm known for this droplet shape, and everybody knows that this is the shape that's associated with my work, and I can use that as a blank canvas, and I can make a crushed opal one, or wigwags, or radicello, or marini, and still have the same form that's the droplet form that's associated with my work. And I can do all kinds of different color work and variation within the same form. So it's a good platform and a shape that's notable, that's different than anything else in the industry. I mean, it's kind of separate because of just the shape. I mean, it's not the classical shapes, pipe shapes that JP Toro kind of started, which a lot of the shapes are kind of based on, the banger hangers and the square with the mouthpiece and the lip, the thicker lip. That kind of stuff was based on Toro's shaping, and it's based in the scientific realm, whereas the droplet is a little bit more pushed towards the classical shape and the smooth lines and the curvature. I mean, to get that curve perfect on the droplet, it's not easy.
No, not at
you
all.
have to blow that out and have like a really perfect bubble. And so it was attractive to me for a lot of those reasons.
Yeah, man, I like it a lot. And when I first saw some of your teaser videos that came out, I was like, "Oh, this is amazing." Now let's see how many people are going to try and copy this thing.
But that's the thing. It's like some people have,
and it's not easy.
It's really clear when it's a copy because they think it's going to be simple, but it's a very difficult shape, and the proportions have to be right, and the mouthpiece has to be the right length. But I've seen a lot of people who've, I guess, got inspiration from that shape, but there's been nobody who's put it into production. There's been only a few people that I've seen try to sell them, but like it's a very clear knockoff because they're lumpy and they're they can't quite get the form right.
Yeah, I agree, man. Deceptively simple. It's one of those things that's fun because my line I do is these little owls that I make that I call the wise guys that go along. It's actually what spawned the name for the podcast, and it's the same kind of thing. It's more of a peanut shape, but the bottom of the owl is that similar teardrop shape, and it's not like it took me probably 100 of them to really fine tune it and figure it out to get it down to where it wasn't creating a straw, or where you just suck water up through the constriction at the neck, and all that stuff. But now it's at a point where I can do it with my eyes closed, and it creates a nice little splash guard and the flow in the air. And I mean, like you're saying, you can make them small enough to fit in your fucking pocket. Like when the whole 10 mil started coming out and the pendant rig came out, and I was like, this is kind of silly. And then I made a couple that were like the size of pendants, and I was like, wow, this is super functional and portable and super cool. Like I was blown away by it. It made so much more sense, in terms of especially with the whole oil industry.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage all the listeners and all the viewers from my YouTube channel to develop their own signature piece that speaks to them. Like I've been working with Opera Glass, and he's called Opera Glass because he has a degree in opera, and so we've been developing some musical notes and some different rigs that kind of go with the theme of music. And I think that people should look at within themselves and find out what in the world is attractive to them, and how to make their own piece, a signature style piece that's not a copy of somebody else's work that they gain inspiration from, but a copy of an inspiration from the world, and something that they see in the world that they say, oh well, this is an inspiration to me. Like I was inspired and am inspired by Venetian glass and classical shape. And so I was like, okay, how can I adapt this shape to make a piece? And some of my earlier works, like I was making some classical, what I was calling vase tubes, and it was very similar. I mean, it had a very similar shape, but much more complicated components around it. But you can Google it and you'll see a couple of them. But I was making those in 2007, 8, and 9, and you have to just find out what's inspiration for you and make your own signature piece. And there's enough objects and concepts in the world for everyone to not copy somebody's work. And I see it a lot. I see a lot of people copying people's work directly, and it doesn't speak highly for one's creativity to do that.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of the past guests, he said you should imitate until you can innovate. The idea, which I completely agree. So, yeah, man. One more thing too, I wanted to ask you about. Being a father and a husband. Like, did you find that point in time when that came into your life that it really changed your perspective on your course and your career as a glass artist and what you wanted to do? Or did it just kind of like add more fuel to your fire?
Yeah, it was fuel to the fire. I met my wife when we were both very young. She was 19 and I was 25, and we got pregnant right away with our first son within a few months. And it was definitely, I mean, at the time we were struggling a lot financially. I mean, we couldn't pay rent. We were on food stamps and Medi-Cal, and I couldn't support myself barely, let alone 2 other people with glass. So it definitely was a huge challenge, and it took years to figure out how to do it. And I tried many different things, but never gave up. I tried opening the school and offering workshops and pipe making classes and Groupon classes and products like the Edison, the e-nail that I made, or the quartz nails, or other businesses. And so it's definitely it's a challenge, and it was a challenge. But as I got older and my kids got older, it became easier. And now my oldest son is just turned 13 last week, and he and I have been doing a live stream called On the Torch Live on Sundays at 2, and so it's been a beautiful process, but it has been the most challenging process. I mean, even more than learning the technical aspects of glass, how to manage a family and the financially living in Berkeley, California, which is up on the top couple places, expensive places to live in the country, while being an artist. That was an even bigger challenge to try to figure out.
Yeah, usually that dynamic is impossible. you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. God bless, brother. That's some serious perseverance, because I know myself, having 2 kids and being married and the whole 9 yards. Like, having the family support is the most important part of this process. Because I'm sure if you didn't have that support, and I'm sure there were times where it wavered here and there, and you weren't really sure what the hell's going on, and who's gonna get food this week. And man, I remember those days. It fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's difficult, and but I'm glad I went through those experiences, because now I am so appreciative that I'm able to live in Berkeley and have a nice car and go to Whole Foods for my grocery. Like, it's not something I take for granted.
Yeah.
Because I had so many years of a struggle. There was no point that Rita said, "Hey, get a regular job," and she put my passion for glass in my career at a very high priority, and kind of put her musical interests aside to support me. And now we've gotten to the point where what we've done at the studio is we've split the building in half, and she has built a music studio with an isolation booth and recording and band practice area on half for her to follow her passion now, and the other half is for me to work in glass. But it's taken years. I mean, we've been together 14 years, so it's taken years to kind of get to that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, I think this is a good spot to take a break and thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back and it'll be time for us to crash the kiln.
Sounds good.
This segment of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by Zen Glass Studios. Located in the heart of St. Petersburg, Florida, Zen Glass has a wide range of offerings to choose from. Their menu includes one-on-one or group classes in their hot shop or flameworking studio, create your own wine glass, and so much more. If you're a traveling artist, they even have a space to rent that you can temporarily call home. With over 50 years of combined experience, Zen Glass can help you fine-tune your techniques, whether you're a novice or advanced glass artist. For their calendar of events, including info about their Third Thursday studio jams, you can contact Zen at zenglass.com. That's zenglass.com. We are back. So the Crash in the Kiln round consists of about 7 questions. And if you want to give me a 30 to 60-second answer, you can, or you can expound upon them as well, as most guests usually do. And the fact that you have this huge background of artists you've worked with, this might be difficult for you, but maybe not. But I always like to ask the first question is, if there is any living glass artist that you have not yet worked with, who is it and why?
Well, I'm actually very open to working with a lot of people, and skill level is definitely attractive, but I think that it's really, I can learn from everybody. I can learn one little trick from most people that I meet, no matter what skill level they are, if it's a way to think about something or if it's a way to execute something. So I'm very open to collabing. I think what makes it attractive to me is somebody's signature style. If somebody's doing something that's unique, it doesn't really matter how long they've been blowing glass or how famous they are. If they do something that speaks to their individual personality, then I would love to collab with them, and I'm very open to receiving messages and requests for collab. Recently, I've been going to Murano and working with 3 brothers that have like about 600 or 800 years of uninterrupted lineage, and they're the Ballerine brothers, and there's 3 brothers, and one's a sculptor, one's a blower, and one's a constructor. And last week we made 5 or 10 classically influenced collabs. But I'm open to working with pretty much anybody.
Hell yeah, that's incredible. Do you have any pictures at some point you could share of that stuff?
Yep. There's in Facebook there's a Revere Glass Gallery, it's called.
Okay.
And I put pictures and like sneak peeks up there first, and then of course on the Instagram and YouTube for the general public, when things get launched. There's a couple sneak peeks of the things that we've done. We're releasing a new video. We've released a sub series that kind of chronicles my travels and teaching and things like that, and that's called Beyond the Torch. Because our other one, their main series, is called On the Torch. So we're going to be releasing a couple Beyond the Torches for the collabs in Italy, and we just released one for Burning Man and blowing glass there and sharing glass blowing at Burning Man. So that's a really good place to check it out. I mean, you can find it by either just typing in how to make a glass pipe in Google, or just Revere Glass on YouTube.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have all these links in the show notes for everybody, for sure. So next question I'd like to ask is if you could describe the sound of glass cracking in one word, and it could be a visceral sound or emotional sound, word-wise. What is that word?
Tink.
Perfect. What are your top 5 favorite colors in glass?
Well, yeah, colors is I mean, I really like a lot of colors, but it's been interesting to see when I started blowing glass, there was about 5 colors.
Yep.
And now there's hundreds, and there's a full spectrum of transparent, rainbow, and opaque colors. I really like the set of blue hues that Glass Alchemy has, because there's a huge spectrum, about 6 blues that vary in density and darkness. I also really like purples and transparent purples. And of course, I like the new reactive colors, UV and CF reactive colors and glow colors and sparkle colors. I like the silver colors. I mean, I think that each color has a purpose, and each color can be used. And I wouldn't want to limit the palette anymore. But I think that some of the new UV colors are very exciting. It's something unique and culturally unique to the pipe making blowers.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's fun. It's especially like you're saying, when we started, it was like one green and it sucked. So now it's amazing to see what we have now at our hands. So, what is your worst injury in the studio?
Well, I've burned myself quite a few times, but I've cutting myself really bad hasn't happened. I've definitely got glass stuck in my foot. I mean, I used to go barefoot every day in my studio, and there's definitely some things I've read online about how I always was barefoot in the studio, so I've got glass stuck in my foot. But I mean, sometimes when I'm working, something will fall on my hand, or something like that, and some burns, but never anything permanent or anything like that. So I'm lucky, but I think that glass blowing is actually fairly safe compared to most mediums. Like, if you want to compare the safety to jewelry, where they're using extremely toxic chemicals, or woodworking where you can cut off your finger, or oil painting where there's a lot of chemicals in the air. I think that glass blowing is probably one of the safest, lamp working, one of the safest art forms.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I try to tell my wife that all the time, and she still doesn't believe me. So, shit. So, do you have any glass blowing themed tattoos?
I have a pair of jacks tattooed on my right forearm.
Awesome. Hell yeah. And the last question I always like to ask is, if you were stranded on an island, any kind of island of your choice, that had a glass studio on it, and it supplied your gas, your kiln, and your torch. And I'm also going to throw in your glasses now, because people have, most guests forget to say glasses. But you had to make something on in the studio. What 5 items would you bring?
On an island, I have a studio, and I have to bring 5 items.
Yeah, you have your gases, your torch, your kiln, and your glasses.
But do I have glass?
Nope.
Wow. And I'm making something, so I would bring the glass, right?
Yep.
Probably like a shipping container full of glass and color.
Beautiful.
And then I would bring my my tools, but specifically the jacks, diamond shears, straight shears, and step down tweezers, which are basically the tools that I use for creating everything. I would definitely bring a nice chair. because that's important to be comfortable. I'd probably bring a truckload of CBD, of crystallized CBD. I think that's 4. I don't know, like probably some like organic food or something.
Hell yeah, there you go. Awesome. Yeah, it's always fun to ask. And I try to keep it as vague as possible just to see what comes up, because I've gotten all kind of fun answers. My favorite so far is Coyle said he'd bring a G5 and just fly the fuck out of there.
Yeah, that's something that he would say probably.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yep.
So, all right, brother. Well, again, I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so again, it's an honor to have you on the show and continuing this educational platform here with the podcast and your videos. And it's fun to just to see how this growth of this community's gone. It's as we can all just become and continue to be pioneers and trailblazers and teach the right stuff. I think this community is going to continue to grow in a positive manner.
Absolutely. It's definitely in a growth phase, and it's going to grow before it shrinks, and it's exciting to be a part of, and I'm very thankful for all the support that I get for my work and the videos, and definitely excited to see where it goes and how it grows and changes with the legalization of cannabis on the horizon. I definitely equate it to being a goblet maker right before Prohibition ended.
Yeah. Well said. I agree completely. Yep. We're all gearing up and getting ready for it. I can't wait. So before we let you go, brother, if you want to give us any kind of a parting piece of advice, and then also where we can find you out there in the world of cyberspace.
Yeah, I would say that the advice is practice and pay attention. That's the best advice that I could give to anybody. And you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Revere Glass. Instagram Revere Glass for lifestyle, and Dustin Revere for Glass Gallery. On Facebook, you can find the Revere Glass Gallery group, which is a group for sharing work and technique. And of course, my website, which is going to basically talk about the classes that we offer and the places that I'm traveling and teaching.
Awesome. Hell yeah, man. Well, again, it was an honor to have you on here, and thank you for tuning into this episode. Hope you enjoyed my chat here with Dustin and all his information and insights, and we'll see you next time on the Wise Guy Radio Show. Take it easy. This episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show is brought to you by The Flow magazine. Since its inception, the focus of The Flow has been to provide a bond among members of the lampworking community. In every issue, you can enjoy great content with the hottest artists and cutting-edge techniques using the latest industry products. These features, along with the continuation of our Women in Glass edition, Glasscraft Emerging Artist Awards, inspiring gallery showcases, dynamic general interest articles, as well as health and safety information, make The Flow the leading international lampworking journal. For more information or to subscribe to The Flow, go to theflowmagazine.com. That's The Flow Magazine. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Wise Guy Radio Show. If you have any questions, comments, or remarks, please leave them in the show notes page area where it says comments. We'll see you soon. Have a wise night.
You're listening to the Wise Guy Radio Show.